Hello and welcome to Cultivating Safety, a joint venture of Between the Rows, the podcast of Glacier FarmMedia, and Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, the health and safety provider to Canada's agriculture sector. From Between the Rows, I'm Gord Gilmour. Joining me today is Kristen Hoffman of WSPS.
Hi, Gord. Good to be here.
The growing season's always the busiest part of the calendar on any farm. Farmers and their employees are engaged in the work required to grow their crops and raise their livestock, and that means they'll be on the road with farm equipment. Kristen, I know that when I was younger, had a couple of close calls with equipment. One that really jumps out at me is I made a left-hand turn into the field without really making sure there wasn't anyone behind me. I was lucky then. My neighbor, fortunately at the time, was quick-witted enough to see it coming, and he slowed right down, and we both got out of it okay. Do you have any similar stories to share?
Oh, goodness. From those near hits right through to hits. I recall being behind a wagon that lost its load of bales all across the road. What a mess, and the time to clean up.
Yeah, losing the load's always trouble, that's for sure. It's happened to me as well. I tie stuff down a lot more carefully now. A big part of staying safe on the road is having a safety plan and sticking to it. We'll be right back to explore that topic with our first guest after this message.
When you farm, you know your land like the back of your hand. What makes your machinery tick? How, when, and where to put down roots? And what it takes to produce. Your expertise is farming. At Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, keeping you and your people safe is ours. For free health and safety resources and tailored safety solutions, visit WSPS.ca.
Collisions and other incidents with slow-moving farm equipment on the road seem to occur every year, especially during our planting and harvesting season. Equipment does have the right to be on the road, but there are challenges. Sheila James is a beef farmer and consultant with Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, WSPS. Sheila joins us to discuss road safety. Welcome, Sheila.
Hi, Kristen.
Sheila, tell us about yourself and the path that led you to WSPS.
Well, I am a beef farmer. My family has been raising beef cattle for over 100 years. I deviated somewhere in my career and I was a paramedic for 10 years. From those experiences, I have known of so many farm accidents where farmers and farm workers were critically injured or killed. It makes me passionate to do everything that I can to prevent these from happening to others.
Tell us what you do in your role as a consultant then to prevent those incidents.
I talk to farm associations, farm groups. I go out to farms, give them coaching to let them know these are the most common injuries that we see, and here's how to prevent.
And what are some of the most common injuries that you see?
Tractor, whether it's in the fields or on the roads.
What are some of those incidents involving whether it's tractors or other farm equipment on the roads that you know of?
I can think of one where a tractor with a cultivator was on the road. They were extended over the center line. A motorcyclist came over a bit of a hill and collided with the cultivator and was killed. Or how about this one, Kristen? You're on the road. You're about to make a left turn into the field when a car tries to pass you. This accident happens over and over again. And usually the driver of the car is often killed and the tractor is cut in half.
So true. These are a few examples of the so many that seem to occur from region to region, province to province.
When you do have an accident on the road, who's most vulnerable? Is it the farmer? Is it the driver that's sort of the innocent bystander, or is it just dangerous for everybody?
It is dangerous for everybody. But like you guessed in the example that I just gave you, often those driving their cars, because the car is much smaller and less mass, so they're often the ones that are injured or killed. But nonetheless, there are many tractor rollovers from the road, driving on a soft shoulder, and the shoulder gives way, tractor rollover. Or here's one for you off the top of my head. Texting while driving the tractor down the road, just a bit distracted, rollover tractor, rode it off.
So what should farmers do to prepare to go out onto the road, whether the equipment or themselves as operators?
You need to be seen to be safe. Your tractor and or equipment needs to be lit up like a Christmas tree so that traffic can see you. You need to have at least 2 white headlights facing forward, at least 1 red tail light facing rearward. If your equipment is wide, if it's over 2.6 meters wide, you need to have 2 red tail lights. When you're on the road, you need to clearly indicate that you are slowing, stopping, or turning. You know what else is really helpful is reflective tape that you can put along the whole length of the equipment really helps to make you visible, especially at night. And don't forget, everybody, the slow-moving vehicle sign needs to be on the rearmost of your equipment on the road.
Do you think there's a tendency to cut corners on some of this stuff during the busiest time of the year? And I'm thinking of seeding and harvest in particular. I know that I've seen a lot of farmers, they'll cheat on things like taking the header off the combine if they're only going half a mile down the highway kind of thing. That's one I'm particularly sensitive to, because at about 2 o'clock in the morning on the Yellowhead Highway here in Manitoba, I pulled out to pass a combine in my Ford Fiesta, only to discover he had his header on. So after much cursing and upset, I managed to get around it with my 4-year-old in the car. But it's definitely something I've noticed ever since, that I do see that, it's that natural thing. Well, I'm only going 400 yards down the road. Why would I pull it off? But what would you say to somebody who's kind of making that decision out there in the field?
I know, and it's all part of being human. Yeah, it's only a little ways down the road, but what I've learned and what I've seen in my career is I can't take shortcuts, because the consequences are just too severe. We have to do it right every time.
For the farmers themselves, then, perhaps some planning and organizing to be sure that we can avoid some of those human factors and take the time to protect ourselves and others. What would you suggest to farmers to prepare themselves to head out onto the road or for that busy part of the season?
Here's another one that we often, because we're in a hurry, we sometimes neglect, and that is having 2 means of attachment, which means that I would have a draw bolt as well as a safety chain. And I say this because we don't want the tractor breaking loose and hitting oncoming traffic or the hydro pole. The safety chain should go from your tractor to your implement, and the safety chain needs to be strong enough to hold the weight of that implement plus its load. Here's another one too that we need to remember, is to secure your load so you don't have a bale of hay or something fall on the road. And always make sure that your equipment is in transport position so that the wings of the cultivator or the roller are up and that the header on the combine is off, so that we're only taking up 1 lane on the highway.
How about in case of emergency? You are that wagon with the blown tire, or perhaps it is a soft shoulder that gives away under you as you're traveling on the road. What would you suggest farmers to have ready for that type of emergency?
A phone, a cell phone, a fully charged cell phone, and you're going to call 911. And hopefully you've got signal for your cell phone there. You know what's so helpful is if we have our 911 numbers at the field entrance like we have on our lane, like our gateway there. So we can get 911 numbers from our municipality for our field entrances as well, so that you can tell the 911 exactly where you are, so they're not driving 45 minutes just to try and find you.
Important to know where you are, especially when we are in some of those wide open, uninhabited areas.
Another thing to remember is make sure you tell a family member or a supervisor where you're going to be and when you expect to return. Because if you don't return when you said, we need to send someone out to find you to make sure that you're okay.
So, Sheila, what are some of the things that frustrate you when you talk to people about these safety issues on the road? What are the things that people just don't seem to be willing to do that just sort of perplexes you?
Perhaps the circle check. Check your equipment before you head out onto the road. So checking your equipment, like get out, do a walk around. Check your equipment, check yourself, make sure that you are okay. Here's another one that I've seen too that frustrates me is having an extra rider in the tractor or combine. Oftentimes it is the dad with the little child, the kid in there too. And that's not a place for babysitting. That's a distraction for dad, the farmer. So I would please ask all farmers to not have your kids in the tractor or equipment with you. You need to be absolutely razor focused on the job that you're doing today.
And now, in your time as both a farmer and a paramedic, what are some of the surprising things that you've seen?
One of the most surprising farm accidents that I have seen is the tractor that was struck by a train. The tractor is going over at the railroad crossing. That one surprised me the most, I think.
I don't even understand how that could happen.
Did you not see the train coming? Look both ways. That one surprised me.
Was there any resolution to either that rail crossing, or was it as simple as the individual may not have looked both ways?
I don't know all of the details. I don't know if it was a texting while driving. I don't know if there was other distractions going on. Not exactly sure, but distraction is one thing that we have to really be watchful of. And in that situation, the tractor operator was killed. His tractor was split in half. It was barely recognizable. It was just tragic.
So you've mentioned things like distraction and texting while driving a few times now. Is that something that's got to be a bigger problem in recent years?
Texting while driving definitely has become a bigger issue. Same with drivers on the road. And that is an issue for us as well, because if we are driving on the road and the traffic are texting, then that's a danger to us on the road. But makes it double dangerous is if the tractor operator is texting as well. It is. It's a big one. I see it all the time.
Sheila, do you have a take-home message for farmers on road safety?
Make sure you are ready. Make sure equipment is ready. Be ready if something does go wrong.
Important reminders for all equipment operators and all others on the road. Be ready. At the end of the day, all of us truly do want to arrive safe. Thanks, Sheila.
Thanks, Sheila. That was Sheila James, a consultant focusing on agriculture with WSPS, sharing her expertise on road safety for the agriculture sector. At the end of the show, we'll give you some resources that will help you stay safe. You're listening to Cultivating Safety, a joint venture of Between the Rows, the podcast of Glacier FarmMedia, and Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, the health and safety provider to Canadian agriculture. Our second guest will tell us how you can keep yourself, your family, and your workers safe in the summer heat. We'll be right back with that conversation after this message.
Making farms safer and protecting your greatest asset. It's what we do at Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. We share best practices to identify and address potential hazards to prevent life-changing accidents before they impact you, your people, and your bottom line. For free resources, training, and tailored safety solutions, visit WSPS.ca.
As the temperatures rise, so does the risk of heat injury to farm workers. As a redhead, this is a topic I'm far too familiar with. More than once, before I got a bit older and wiser, I found myself getting a bit lightheaded and losing focus from the heat. Kristen, what's your experience with this?
Oh, so true. Although not a redhead, I have thrown bales to the point of dizziness in the past.
So our next guest will tell us how to help you, your family, and your workers beat heat this summer.
High temperature, humidity, and direct sun are so important for crop production, but can be deadly for farmers and their workers. Exposure to heat stress may occur indoors, such as in barns, mows, and greenhouses, and outdoors, and definitely through heavy work. Warren Clements is a specialized services lead and occupational hygienist with Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, WSPS. Warren joins us to discuss heat stress and tips to prevent it. Hi, Warren.
Hi, Kristen. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How does heat stress affect the body?
Well, when we get exposure to heat, our bodies, we are always trying to get rid of excess heat. So heat stress occurs when the body cannot get rid of the excess heat. Yeah, you might even call it a breakdown of your body's cooling system. So as your body's core temperature rises, your heart rate increases, and heat stress is the result.
I'm a ginger, so I'm pretty prone to this sort of thing myself. And I know that when I have suffered from it, it always surprises me. It's like it sneaks up on me. Are we perhaps not very good at sort of sensing the early warning signs? And is this something that you have to address before it even occurs? Prevention versus treatment.
So some people may be aware and some people are not. Some people maybe you're just really engaged in the work that you're involved in, or the activity you're involved in, and you just, and you've got a goal. You're trying to finish the run or finish the work or finish the game, that sort of thing. So maybe it's just you're more focused on the activity and not thinking so much about being dehydrated or having your heart rate increase.
So those are a couple signs. Warren, what are some of the other signs that we should think about or better recognize, perhaps in ourselves and maybe even our workers?
You may experience a lot of sweating. You may feel warmer. Your face may show redness. But as it progresses, some of the symptoms you can experience could be fatigue, lightheadedness, dizziness, heavy sweating, rash, a headache. And even as it progresses even more, there's more potential, more serious symptoms as well.
And what are some of those more serious things?
You might get muscle cramps, heat cramps, so muscle pain from overworked areas in the arms, legs, and stomach, probably caused by a salt imbalance from heavy sweating. You might get heat stroke. So with heat stroke and heat exhaustion, you've got an elevated high core body temperature. You may have headache or dizziness. You may pass out. You may even have weakness, confusion, or just acting strangely.
And as you're listing off that list of things, it strikes me that this is one of those things that could really compound, right? Because a lot of those things are things that would be limiting in my ability to recognize other dangers, right? So if I'm lightheaded and nauseous and I'm doing something that's intrinsically dangerous, the likelihood that I'm about to stick my hand in a auger, for example, it seems to be that it would be elevated.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a compounded issue. You're dealing with the heat stress, and you're maybe not thinking so clearly, and you're a bit fatigued, and but you have to keep alert in a workplace in general.
So, Warren, what factors should we look for that contribute to heat stress?
I'm going to put these factors into some groups, and 3 groups. The first group is the environment. So it's high air temperature. So it could be heat waves, such as temperatures of 32 degrees C or more are predicted for 3 or more days. You might have also high humidity. Imagine greenhouses where plant production is being done and there's a need for a considerable amount of watering. And this might be manual or automated, but Environment Canada has another, if they report air temperatures that exceed 30 and a humidex that exceeds 40, that might be another environmental sort of trigger. And could also be that the humidex on site reaches or exceeds 35. So, and all these, these are all grouped into the environment.
Good sources of information to look into to understand the environment, such as Environment Canada or perhaps your local municipality.
Yeah, and you might even just hear it on the weather report on your local radio station. There's a humidex warning, or there's a heat wave in our city today.
And are we getting more of those as the climate worms? Is this something that you think is going to be a growing issue for people who are working outdoors?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. It looks like some of every year it seems to turn out a bit hotter than the past. And if you look at the past 10 years, we're probably having more heat waves and more in humidex, elevated humidex levels. So I think that's a fair assessment.
Environment is the first bucket you mentioned. What is the next?
So then you have to look at the work as well. So anything that's a very strenuous or challenging task where there's going to be a lot of energy expenditure. So you're generating heat or body heat while you're working. And the harder you work, the more heat you generate. And your body has to sort of achieve or work to dissipate that heat. And if you can't dissipate the heat, then you overheat. And that's what heat stress is all about. So it's a strenuous task. So the first bucket, again, environment, the second work, and the third is really the worker. So one of the things is you have to be acclimatized to heat stress. And, to describe it, it's really acclimatization is the gradual adaptation that improves your ability to tolerate heat stress. And you have to be involved in physical activity in the heat stress conditions to become acclimatized. So part of the problem here in Canada generally is that our seasons can transition kind of abruptly. So one day in spring, it might be 14 Celsius. The next day, it might be 27. And it's hard to acclimatize with this transition in temperature.
There is snow in Western Canada and a heat wave in Central Canada this week.
Yeah. And also in the middle of summer, if you take a week off, you head up to, say, the cottage, and you go into cooler water for swimming, and you're maybe not doing a lot of physically demanding work. Then you go back to work. This can be challenging. You've lost some of your acclimatization. Also, the health conditions. If you've got health concerns, you may need to take medications. These medications have the effect of being dehydrating. This reduces your level of body hydration, and that makes it more difficult to respond to heat stress.
It sounds to me like what you're describing is self-care. We just have to kind of be aware of our bodies and respect what their limitations are. But I think there's also sort of the Superman syndrome that nobody likes to admit a weakness or slow down or anything like that. What would you say to the farmer or the farm worker who kind of suffers from that?
Well, just kind of be respectful of your body, or, it may be trying to send you signals that sometimes you have to listen to. Maybe there's always, something that you can put off till tomorrow, or maybe asking for additional help when needed. So maybe you need some additional support or resources to get the job done.
So what should farmers do to prevent heat stress for themselves and their workers?
Well, in general, you should implement a heat stress plan. And that plan may be done by your employer, or you may be the employer. So this plan helps to respond to heat stress. So what could you have in your heat stress plan? You might have some triggers, some environmental triggers. Like there's a formal reported heat wave you hear on the radio, or humidex levels are exceeding 35. And if those triggers are met, then the plan should be implemented and put into effect. And some of those things in the plan, you might have strenuous tasks. This might be a manual picking operation where the crop being picked is fairly heavy and a lot of awkward positions, the postures are required. And you might do this earlier in the day before it gets too hot, or you might might do it in the cooler part of the day.
So schedule the work, especially if it is heavy work, around the heat of the day.
Also, it might be another part of your heat stress plan. Evaluate if you can use some machines to reduce the physical demands of the work. Maybe you've got some cherry picking equipment like a shaker and a catcher, and you can use it to shake and catch the cherries out of the tree. Otherwise, if you don't have the cherry picking equipment, you're picking the cherries manually. And certainly, you might have air conditioners on your site. It might be in the cab of your tractor, but it might be just in the lunch or break room, and where you've got the AC. So so certainly make sure that if you don't have AC, make sure you've got some cool shaded areas for breaks, if at all possible.
Do you have a top 3 list of suggestions for farmers to prevent heat stress?
Make sure you've got a plan ready for those hot days, and key elements to the plan. Make sure you're keeping people hydrated as much as possible. Train workers on the concerns of heat stress, and do your best to schedule either strenuous or difficult jobs to cooler times of the day. That might have been 4
important reminders that I will share as I draw hay later today. Thanks so much, Warren.
Thanks, Warren.
Well, thanks for having me.
That was Warren Clements, a consultant focusing on occupational hygiene with WSPS. He told us how to stay safe in the summer heat. That's another episode of Cultivating Safety, a joint venture of Between the Rows, the podcast of Glacier FarmMedia, and Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, the health and safety provider to Canada's agriculture sector. You can find more information on both topics we've covered today by visiting WSPS's website at wsps.ca/Between the Rows. That's wsps.ca/Between the Rows. For Between the Rows, I'm Gord Gilmour.
And for WSPS, I'm Kristen Hoffman.
And we're both wishing all of you a safe and healthy summer season.